Call the order of the meeting of the Select Board of September 9th. We're going to go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss 155 Old Fall River Road, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect to the litigating position of the public body, and the chair declares so, which I do, and the Director of Planning under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, which I do, and to approve the executive session minutes of August 12th, 2024. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by?
Second.
Mr. O'Neill, on the motion, any questions? Roll call vote. Mr. Tattlebaum? Yes. Mr. Mickelson?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Brooks?
Yes.
And the chair votes in favor. We will be in executive session. We'll return as closely as possible to 6:30 for regular session. Please rise as we have a sit down. Good timing.
Yeah, I guess so.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing as we offer a moment of silence for our service people, service personnel, both here and abroad, and also for a remembrance of 9/11, which is 2 days from today. Please be seated. Warrant has been passed around and signed. Meeting is being recorded by DCTV, Dartmouth Community Television. All votes, unless the chair declares, will be by voice. First item, we have no appointments. First item on the agenda, I'm going to take out of order. We're going to discuss 562 Reed Road, the request to use town property. Attorney Savastano? That's the reason why we're doing it, because he costs money.
What do you got? That costs money too, don't it?
No, you don't, there's no, where's my text?
Okay, Attorney Savastano, we have a request from Pause and Play, people who own Pause and Play to basically to use town property. What?
Okay, so, and again, I've spoken to Christopher Michaud, the Director of Public Health, on this issue as well, who's very familiar with soils. I guess the way I would tell you to look at this is your neighbor got a variance to put something closer to your property, and then they came to you and said, okay, now we want to use your property to build that thing that's now closer to your property. From a legal perspective, I see no benefits to the town whatsoever. I see many potential risks. Depending on the soils, we don't know what's going to be staged there. If they're contaminated, ultimately, the property owner, which is the town of Dartmouth, not the person who's doing the work, is liable for a cleanup if there's any spill. If there's spill from trucks, if there's contamination from the soils that are moved. So there are liabilities there. There's also liabilities if somebody gets injured. You may remember a lawsuit that we were involved in where somebody was working on the wires outside of Manny Soar's property, got electrocuted, and sure enough, the town got sued. Mm-hmm. The town's property is right there, adjacent to it. We had nothing to do with that. So from a legal perspective, I see no benefits to the town, a lot of potential liabilities. Ultimately, if you do it, again, I was asked to look at it and to come up with a license agreement and everything else. So why would you pay me? That's another issue. Why would the town pay me so somebody could benefit from the use of town property? If despite all my warnings you want to do it anyway, then I would say at a minimum that they would have to pay money into the town for me to draft, and then they would pay my fees for me to draft the documents. I would want them to be properly insured, for the town to be listed as an additional insured. You'd want to see workers' comp insurance from anybody who's doing work on the property. You would want to make sure that they post a bond for any potential cleanup. I don't know how you determine what the cost of that bond would be. Again, maybe Chris Michaud could point us to somebody to tell us that. I don't know how you would come up with that calculation.
So let me ask this question. This project went before the planning board and went before the ZBA.
Okay.
Personally, I don't recall receiving any kind of a notice, official notice, from the ZBA regarding that. My understanding is the proponents had said something to the effect that they wanted to use town property to those two boards. Those two boards are not.
They're not the owners of the property.
They're not the owners of the property.
No.
You know.
You just treat, you are a landowner. Pretend it's your own house or your own property. It's the same thing. Your neighbor comes to you and says, okay, now I got a variance to do something that's not allowed by bylaw, putting it closer to your property, and now we want to stage, Mr. McDonald, let me use your property so I can do work on my property.
I mean, what do they, I mean, have they, I mean,
why you
other
would
than
say-
this, other than this generic request, I mean, basically, what do they want to use town property for?
My
Store
understanding,
material
again,
to
my
travel
understanding
material?
is they were gonna have machines, I don't know for sure, that's a good question. But in general conversation with Mr. Michaud, I was under the impression, but I might be wrong, so don't quote me on this, that they were, it would involve moving of soils as well. There'd be machines on the property. I can't say for sure. They should be more specific as to what exactly they want to do, first of all. And second, from our perspective, I mean, again, and are they going to pay the town for the use of their property, or are you just going to be letting them do it for free?
So when did we find out that they were using our property? Do we have a date?
I don't know. I was not informed. Did they already use our property?
I don't know that. Apparently.
Do you know that?
Apparently, they are using it.
All right. Let me ask you a question. Is Mr. Reposa here? Okay, all right.
So,
Mr.
and,
Reposa, why don't you
and,
come up here, please?
never mind. We'll ask this guy.
So currently as what's going on the property right now, has any of the contractors or anything encroached on town property?
Yes.
Okay. What has happened to the town property?
Because the border wall is 6 feet from the town property that abuts our property, there were excavators that drove on it to get dirt. We removed the dirt. We didn't store dirt on the town property. We used trucks to get the dirt out, and then we used trucks to bring it back in. It's very hard because the shape of our property to get anything in, because it's not a straight line, it's a diagonal line.
Right.
So really hard to get any truck around into there. We've already done the excavation, we poured the foundation, and we've backfilled. The only thing really remaining, and we can talk to my contractor and ask him a question, is it takes 2 weeks to put up the building. That's it.
All right, so let me ask this question. When you made this proposal to the planning board,
Yeah.
and you made the proposal to the ZBA, did anybody on those boards say something about being close to town property, that you needed to come before the select board to ask to use town property?
They did not. Matter of fact, they gave permission and said I could so long as I loomed and seeded the town property after.
Can you just repeat that again? Who said that?
It's in notes from the approved site plan, page 5.
So that would come from the planning board? So the
Oh,
planning board,
and
planning
zoning
board
board.
approved
Well,
you
the
to
building
use
department.
town property as long as you loomed and seeded afterwards?
That's correct.
I guess somebody doesn't know how to read the room.
Excuse me, but
Yes.
when did you have the property surveyed?
Yes.
So didn't that tell you then and there, when did you have that? When was the survey done?
I couldn't tell you the exact time. We've been doing
At
this
that
since
point,
2021.
You knew that you might have to infringe on the town property.
Oh, yeah, we're aware. And we had
I-
to, we moved the building further away from the town line just to satisfy the ZBA. It was 1 foot, now it's, went to 6 feet or 7 feet from the town line. And I apologize
Well,
for using it.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm not upset with you.
Okay,
I'm more upset with another board, allowing this to happen when they don't have the jurisdiction to allow it to happen.
oh, I
That-
understand.
That's just, that doesn't sit well with me. It really doesn't. I mean, I don't want to be the harbinger of somebody not expanding a business and stuff. My preference would be to have your attorney, and I know you have an attorney because you stated in a couple of your emails that you had, your attorney draw up something for town council to review, and then have town council review it, and then whatever time he spends, to reimburse the town on that. I would go with the recommendation of what town council had said here. I don't want to be the guy to say, you've already invested time and money in expanding your business. And I know you do a good business because I travel Reed Road every day, so I see the cars go in and out. And I want to, personally, I want to work with you on this to make sure, but I want to make sure that the town is covered, and that that if there's any detriment to the town property, that, it's made whole. My other issue, of course, is with the planning board, and I'll deal with that on a separate issue.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
All right, so I was on the planning board at the time. Mr. Reposa was in front of that board quite a few times, along with the back and forth with the ZBA. And one of the first things noted at the planning board was the fact that the property lines were, they traversed over the property line onto town property prior to any work being done on the land. The Reposas knew that. They basically came back and said, we're aware of that, and we're going to bring the property back to where the line should be. So that was part of the agreement.
Absolutely.
Right? So that was one of the main concerns that the planning board did have, is that prior to any work being done, the surveyor had shown that there were plantings on town property. There were, I believe, stone walls on town property. At the time, I don't believe any storage, any materials were being stored on town property. But the planning board made them very well aware of the fact that there was encroachment on town property, and that wouldn't stand. They were aware of that, and you can go back to the meetings and view the comments made at that meeting with mostly with their engineering company, Prime Engineering. There was agreement that town property would be, those encroachments would be taken off at some point. So went back to the ZBA at that point because there was some issues with, I think it was something to do with water retention on the premises and the different systems that were going to be installed to deal with calculations as far as getting the water out of that particular watershed zone. So that was at the ZBA. I believe that I saw in the ZBA that same issue was brought up, that there was encroachment, that it would be handled through the building department to make sure that was fixed when this project was brought in, if it was finally approved. I think at that point it came back, once the ZBA approved the application that they had made with ZBA, it came back to the planning board, more meetings, more discussions with engineering, and finally approved by both boards. Now it goes off to the building department. I don't think at that point that we, the planning board, had known that there would need to be regular trespass onto the town property in order to get this project done. The only thing that I recall on the planning board was the issue with current encroachment, not future encroachment, as far as the building goes. Now, in my opinion, Mr. Reposa has been through hell in a handbasket with this project. It was, and I still have the opinion that it was an overburdened lot. However, the membership agreed to allow it on the plan, and the ZBA had done their work when it came to the retention of the water on that lot. Goes to the DPW at that point and the building department. So whatever deals were made in order to get these buildings done and foundations in, then I can't say much to that. But what I can say is that I think the town should look to Mr. Reposa and his wife to try and help them through this process. They've got a hell of a lot of money invested in this thing now. The boards have approved it. There was encroachment on this property prior to any building going on. And they've admitted that that did happen, and it will be fixed. So I think that was the ultimate for both those boards, that that agreement come out if the plan was approved, and it was. So I personally, I understand Mr. Savastano's comment about the liability for the town, and I'm sure the contractors can name the town as additional insureds if they have to traverse onto town property with the vehicles. There is no storage being, no soil storage being brought onto the town property, so that should not be an issue. I'm not sure how much time it's going to take for the crews to get, the work done and get off of the town property, but, not an easy lot to deal with, and they've done their due diligence, they've done the work that they need to do to get it through the town boards, and at this stage of the game, let's work with them to try and get a good project built, and not against them to try and stop it.
Right, that's what I had suggested, that, to happen, but what we have here is, we have the cart before the horse type of thing. This permission to use town property to do the work should have happened before anything started, and
But
there seems to be a miscommunication among boards, that something has been given, and the people who are responsible for the property weren't involved or weren't notified, or if they were, we didn't get that information. So then all of a sudden, when we started to get DMs and emails regarding this property, regarding what the situation's going on, the work has already started, and things have already started to happen. Then all of a sudden, now we're putting into a reactive instead of being proactive, and it doesn't make us look good, especially if we just say, if we're going to be obstinate. It doesn't make us look good, to the proposers and the business.
No, but the ZBA, you have to understand, the ZBA and the planning board, they were dealing with the current encroachment. They weren't talking about the buildings.
Right.
And building the buildings. If they have to go over the line in order to finish the project, then,
But
You know,
even with the current
I would doubt-
encroachment at the time, this board still wasn't notified.
well, I don't know if this board was notified.
Oh, it
but the building department was notified, and I think it's even on the plans at the
But
building
ultimately, the
department.
responsibility of any town property falls on this board, period.
Well, there's,
I think it came to our attention when Mr. Misha found out about soils being stored on the property. I would doubt, I don't know, because I haven't looked at it. I didn't know until today that he was going to say that the boards gave him permission to use the property. I would doubt either the planning board or the ZBA said, yes, you can use town property. It sounds like what they said is you got to get off town property
Exactly.
and you got to clean it up. So I think they're misinterpreting what the board said. I would have to see it in writing that the boards actually gave them permission, because I think both the planning board and the ZBA know that they don't have permission to let somebody use town property. So I'm guessing he's misinterpreting what
Well,
was stated.
as I stated before, I mean, I'm not, they're already well into the project, but I want to make sure that the town is hold harmless in anything that goes over there, and then whatever's done on town property gets fixed and repaired. That's why I made the suggestion that his attorney contact you, have them write out something to, for you to review. There's no reason for you to spend the time to write something for them. They're the ones who wanted to use the town property. Let them come up with something there. Give us what we need to have,
It would be a
hold
license,
harmless.
they would need a license agreement, and they would need to show that the town is named as an additional insured on whatever insurance the contractors have. We'd want to
Right,
see the
and that would
workers'
be the initial.
workers' comp,
That would be the initial
liability.
discussion with their attorney, and then they can come up with that. And then their attorney can come up with that information,
And they should prepay for my time.
that too. Mrs. Brooks?
I have a question.
Then
In
Mr.
looking
Tattlebaum.
at 562 Reed Road and talking about the piece that is town property, I'm assuming in the picture that I have, it would be where you've constructed, then it's a dirt area where it looks like it's parking or turnaround. Is that part of town property? Do you want to look at this? Because what I'm wondering is, does it make sense for the town to sell a strip to square off his property?
This is my property.
Yeah,
Right here on that corner starts the town property, and it goes diagonal, small bit on the other side. Most of this is mine.
okay.
Anthony?
I mean, he's got it,
It's actually a small,
Walled off to
a
the
small
woods.
area that barely, I think it's overstated how we're driving on the town property. Because it's not a straight line, it's a small
Is it-
sliver that goes in,
this piece right here.
and it's just the construction. And one more,
This is minuscule.
all our, very minuscule, I think it's overstated for sure. All our contractors and subcontractors have insurance that have named Dartmouth. Everything that is needed to, my contractor's sitting right here, just in case, to provide any proof. I have all the information there. I think it's just very much overstated how much we're actually driving. Most of this property is mine, and I have every intention, as I had for the past 11 years, taking care of Dartmouth property without any qualms about it whatsoever. Any property that abuts my property, you better be sure that I'm gonna make sure it looks
Is
good.
it, if you didn't mow this triangle of Dartmouth property,
It would look
it
terrible.
would look stupid.
It would look very terrible.
Yeah, so he's saying on this, it's just the triangle from beyond this entrance sign. Triangle,
Because the line's not
even
straight.
Right.
a strip.
Well, Mr. Tattlebaum?
I don't know that we.
It's apparent
sell
here
them.
that we have, doesn't happen very often. We've had 2 or 3 departments in town where maybe fell through the cracks. And you ended up, we don't have this, I can't remember a time this happened on my, it's time for Mr. Proposer to be taken care of as quickly and as cheaply and as fast as possible.
I appreciate that.
And I think that if it requires Anthony to work with your attorney, quick and easy, as we can, to protect the town in any way we can, you've got professional contracts and make sure we do, and give them the right to get the job done and move on. I wish we spent this kind of time on major issues that are much more important. Let's get the guy going and be done with it, but protect the town as best we can in a cheap way.
I think that's what I said.
Okay?
Whatever. Whatever way we can do it.
Right.
That works for
Right,
both
but
parties.
we want to make sure that not only are we protected, he's protected. So,
Both
you know,
parties.
you're using town property, you know, so, you know, there are 33,000 people here who own that property,
I
you
understand.
know, and they have the right to make sure that their property is being protected. And we protect him from anything that goes wrong. That's all, simple
Little
enough.
strip, it seems like we can do this.
That's what we're saying.
Get a letter over.
So my
to-
suggestion would be,
Like a mutual
Get a
agreement.
letter to
my
Anthony.
suggestion would be to have your attorney contact Attorney Savastano as to what he would like to see in an agreement, have your attorney drop the agreement, making sure your contractor has the town as an additional insured. That's easy enough. All he has to do is contact his insurance company, say, look, I want to put Town of Dartmouth on an additional insured on this job, and they'll send the certificate of insurance to town council, and then we can go from there. I think that's a simple, probably the quickest way of doing it, you know, and the issues with the other departments, well, that's something entirely different, that's not your issue. You want to make sure that you're taken care of and the town's taken care of.
And Mr. Chairman, maybe part of that agreement, you have like a timeline, almost like a deadline when they can project when that project's gonna be done, so that the property reverts back to the town, if you will. Some sort of mutual agreement with some kind of a deadline.
Yeah, we can
Evening.
do that.
With winter coming,
Just
I'm
for
not.
the record, just make sure.
Jason
state-
Brass.
Thank you.
With winter coming, I'm not sure. We had hoped to already be much further along and catch some of the good weather. I came in with an approved set of plans that the proposers had given me. And we had a pre-construction meeting with DPW, and they had some concerns about stockpiling soils along that strip, which we agreed not to. So any soil stockpiles were all trucked out, trucked back in. The main use for this strip is access with vehicles
Right.
and deliveries. That's it. So, or equipment traversing right around the edge. If you see some of the grass that exists along the stone wall, it's still pretty much in the same state it was, and it hasn't really been touched. And then some of the area that's town property is actually his old parking lot of the crushed shells that's still visible. It's mainly an access to get deliveries in and out.
Okay.
Pretty much that's it. So timeline, we'll see if we can get rolling. It'd be perfect before the winter, but I'm not sure. It all depends on how the weather is this fall.
Well, I mean, I would think, and I know sometimes getting a mutual agreement sometimes takes a little longer, but I think with Attorney Salvestano, the faster your attorney calls him and gets it going, the faster this thing can get taken care of.
And as a force of habit, when I apply for a building permit here in town, I always add Town of Dartmouth as this insured when I apply for my permit. So that should be on record with the foundation permit already.
All right.
Both, but yeah, it's necessary to get the permit.
Question? I just asked Attorney Salvestano, can this be done simply in a way that protects the town?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody dies there during the process, that doesn't mean the town won't be sued.
I don't mean that. I mean the process to get the
Yes.
agreements done.
Yes.
We have to think on the bad
have
side,
to-
sorry.
I have to expect the worst
I-
case
that's
scenario,
your
because that's
job.
usually when I get involved, when it's the worst case scenario. Like the guy who got electrocuted. He didn't die, but he got,
Want a little bit of money on
Yeah,
that.
but, all right, so our suggestion would be to Mr. Raposa to get a hold of your attorney tomorrow morning, have him contact Attorney Savastano. Let's get this ball rolling, and maybe in 2 weeks, when we have our next meeting, we'll have it ready to go, hopefully. You know, that way, it gets you quicker, you know, it gets everything going, so, you know. Unfortunately, this should have been done earlier, but that's not. Now we're here to take care of the situation, so hopefully we can make you whole. Okay? All right, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda, for actually the first item on the new business, I think Attorney Savastano, I think you're all set.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Two.
We have an outdoor seating request from the Stackhouse Fairgrounds.
Jose Lima.
He's here.
Mr. Lima. What's that?
Jay, how are you doing?
Good and you?
Good. So you're the new president, huh?
Helping, yeah, Joe couldn't make it tonight, so I'm
All right.
helping him out.
Okay, all right. So you're looking for an outdoor area for an event?
Yeah.
What's the date of the event?
Oh, it's just for outdoor seating, that's
Oh,
all it's
outdoor
for.
seating, perfect,
Yeah,
okay.
that's it.
Always, all the time.
Nobody really wanted to eat outside during this, this past summer, the way the heat was, so.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. Board, any have any questions?
So is this for year-round usage
Yeah.
on an as-needed basis?
Yeah.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. O'Neill. On the motion, any questions? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, we have the Elsie Haskell Garden Dedication Event Request. Enid.
I will disappear behind the podium.
Yeah, you have.
It's still better to be on this side of the podium.
We do have a little stool somewhere, right?
That's okay, I'm subject to falling, we don't want to do
Okay,
that.
all right.
We're fine. You'll be able to hear me, which may be worse than seeing me. I'm here this evening to ask for a police detail to be assigned to the corner of Elm Street and Prospect Street and down to where Sanford Lane, the private lane is, to block it off for probably 2 to 4 hours on Saturday, the 14th, as we have a planned ceremony there to dedicate that small parcel of garden to the memory of Elsie Haskell, who was the head librarian of both the old Southworth Library and the new Southworth Library on Dartmouth Street. We had hoped to do this before her demise, but we were too slow on the pickup. She passed away at 99 years old, and we miss her even more today than we did before. She's a wonderful lady and a wonderful leader.
Yep. And I'll be honest with you, Enid, I couldn't think of a better person for it to be.
Right,
That's for sure.
right.
So,
Right? A
What
model,
pleasure?
a model for all the young girls in the 40s, I'll tell you.
Motion to approve.
Oh, wow, thank you.
there's a second.
Second.
All right, motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Ms. Brooks on the motion. Any questions? Being none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, none unanimous.
Okay, so we
Got
won't,
it.
so we won't have a problem. Tell me what the next step is. Does this board let the DPW know? Or he's right there?
DPW now knows, and so does the police.
Yep, you got them both,
So
you
I would
got
suggest.
them both eating out of your
I
hand
would
right there.
suggest to call them,
Right.
tomorrow, make
I
up,
will.
set up what you need to set up.
We're going to deputize you, Enid. You can do the traffic.
Marvelous.
We're gonna give her a whistle.
Marvelous.
We're gonna get her a whistle.
You scare the hell out of them.
Yeah, but we'll need a podium for that so they should be seen.
Before I leave this wonderful podium, our president, Pauline Santos, would like just a minute of your time. Because while we're contemplating what's going on here for this ceremony, we are also contemplating what's going to happen with our lease. We haven't had any feedback yet from the town hall as to rectifying our lease, and she would like to make a statement.
I know the lease was brought up last meeting, and we were discussing it about doing a longer-term lease. And if we do a longer-term lease in 3 years,
You're taking away my thunder?
do a longer-term lease in 3 years, it has to go to town meeting for approval.
We know
We
that.
can give you 3 years, no problem. I'd like to see a little longer term because you guys do such a great job there. We want to try to do it and
Right.
send it to town meeting for approval for at least a 10-year lease.
That would be wonderful, because in order for us to get grants to pay for this and not use taxpayers' money, we
Mm-hmm. Right.
need a longer lease. It's just a
Yep.
no-brainer.
But any town property that we have people using it for recreation, art, whatever, it requires, any beyond a 3-year lease requires town meeting approval.
That's
We did
okay.
it with Burgo.
Right,
So we have leases coming up with DYAU and also the Aiken House. So we have some discussions to make.
I understand that it has to go before town meeting. We have no problem with that.
No, my preference is to give you a longer lease and go to town meeting for it.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Is 10 a good number for you? The
We'd like
10-year lease?
30.
Is that a good?
We'd like 30, so we could enjoy all the fruits of our
If you
labor.
like it, you have to ask for it.
Yeah,
We will do that, sir.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, so speaking of mutual aid, now we have the UMass Dartmouth Mutual Aid Agreement. Chief?
Evening. What I'm requesting is that we engage in a mutual aid agreement with the UMass Police Department. This agreement is very similar to the Semlec agreement that we engaged in 2012, and that still exists today. That's with 30 different communities. And what it allows us to do is work cooperatively with them for police services as well as police details. In this particular situation with UMass, they have different campus locations around town. And additionally, their fueling station is across from the barracks. So their cruisers are constantly driving around town. This agreement would allow them to take immediate police action if needed. For instance, if they had an impaired driver in front of them, something like that they came across, it would allow them to then take police action. In addition to that, it would allow them to work police details in town. The agreement as written, like I said, it's a Semlec agreement. It also has procedures if they were to take action in town and to notify us. We have the final say in the outcome of the calls. It does not allow them to patrol the town or kind of take over in that aspect. It's very limiting, but it allows us to work together cooperatively.
Let me ask this question, just to, because I was, in reviewing the warrant and reading the mutual aid agreement, to become a police officer for UMass Dartmouth, you have to have the same training as a Dartmouth police officer, correct?
Yes.
That's what I need to know. I
Excuse me.
just don't want, like a guy who was a small security guard, then all of a sudden becomes that and then does what he wants to do.
And ultimately, you're in charge of that group. They have to answer to you.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if they were to take action in town, they ought to call us as soon as possible, and that's what the agreement actually says. And then our officers would respond to that scene, and have the final say in how it was handled. Yep.
Just so everybody understands.
Anybody else have any questions?
I had a question.
Mrs. Tattelbaum?
What about the reverse of y'all going into the campus? You see that changing activity, or less, more, the same? Or?
Sure. So this agreement is a two-way agreement. However, we really don't need the agreement to do that since their property is part of the town of Dartmouth. We already have authority on the campus. But this would also, occasionally some of the students live off campus, and we've had to respond to off-campus housing, mostly for parties, noise issues, and so forth. I think with this agreement, too, it would encourage UMass to maybe do a joint response with us to those locations, and that would allow the school to take sanctions if there were to be violations.
Great idea.
That would help.
Great idea.
Yeah.
I mean, it hasn't been too much of a problem in the past, but when it has, it's a lollapalooza, that's for sure.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? All right, do I have a motion on this?
Motion to agree, to write the mutual agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion, any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, unanimous. All right,
Thank
get
you.
that signed and get it going. All right. Next item on the agenda, we have Buzzards Bay. Man. This is where we go right here, the 5.
We're only a half hour late.
Right. Chairman McDonald, members of the Select Board, thanks for having me here. Tonight, I'm coming before the Select Board to talk about Town Administrator Vitale. Thanks for working with me on this, and Tim Barber and Chris Michaud as well, who's not here tonight, but we all spent a lot of time working through this, and I'm here to talk about Connect to Protect, which is a really exciting program that we want to partner with the town of Dartmouth on. Just a quick snapshot for those out in the audience watching this virtually who don't know who the Buzzards Bay Coalition is. We're a nonprofit, member-supported organization. We're dedicated to the restoration, preservation, and sustainable use of Buzzards Bay for everybody. We've got about 12,000 total members with about 2,500 sort of in the greater Dartmouth area. We do a lot of work with other local nonprofits like DNRT, and we're active in 21 communities around the Bay and have a few other field offices out there. Right? I don't want to spend too much time on these slides, but I just want to remind people out there why Connect to Protect, that we're going to talk about later, is such an important program for Dartmouth and how it's going to work for us. A lot of people don't realize what nitrogen pollution is, where it comes from, and what it does to our coastal waters. So when we have a healthy area, like the Outer Bay, we have a lot of healthy eelgrass, we have healthy shellfish beds, the ecosystem is healthy. When you add nitrogen, which is essentially a component of a commercial fertilizer, we get an overgrowth of algae. Waters become murky with excess chemicals like chlorophyll, and those suppress the growth of eelgrass. They consume oxygen that would ordinarily be important to other sea life in the area, and then we see the die-off of fish and shellfish in places like the inner Apponeganset Bay. Where nitrogen comes from, it comes from a whole variety of sources. Some of it comes down in rainfall. Some of it comes off of our homes in the form of lawn fertilizer. Nitrogen is really high in pet waste. It comes from our septic systems, which really is the focus of our talk tonight. But it also comes from agricultural waste and farm fertilizers as well. All of those either run into the brooks and streams that we have running throughout the Buttonwood-Apponeganset watershed, or it goes down through the soils and enters groundwater, and then groundwater flows along the same contours that we see out on the surface and eventually makes its way down to Apponeganset Bay. So that nitrogen makes its way to Apponeganset Bay through a variety of mechanisms and from a variety of sources. Tonight, we're really going to focus in on septic systems because they are a concentrated source of nitrogen that is having an impact on Apponeganset Bay. So current state of Apponeganset Bay, we have a Bay Watchers program which does sampling across the entire summer for nitrogen, for chlorophyll, and they also sample for water clarity using something we call a Secchi disc. So That disc goes down and the person records how far down they can see that disc. That tells us how clear the water is. And those three factors go into what we call a Bay Health Index score. All this data gets compiled over a lot of years, and that's what you see in that little dotted graph there, is dating back 20 or 30 years. We've been looking at these specific bodies of water, and then based off those three elements, nitrogen, chlorophyll, and the water clarity, that body of water gets assigned a Bay Index score. The inner bay right now, and that score is out of 100. So just like you were in class back in high school, you know, these are probably not great scores, right? You don't want to get a 32 on your math test. So right now the inner bay is scoring a 32, and that's primarily because of nitrogen inputs from the two freshwater streams that flow into it and the groundwater that's coming down into the inner bay. Progressively, we see better scores as we move outward, particularly when we move beyond the causeway, because that outer bay connects directly to the bigger Buzzards Bay and gets flushed much better. So the inner bay scores are reflective of poor flushing because of the constricted mouth at the swing bridge at the Apponeganset Bay Causeway. You know, to put these scores in perspective, the inner harbor of New Bedford, inside the hurricane barrier, which is a highly industrialized harbor with a Fairhaven's wastewater treatment plant discharging to it, scores a 45. So that puts that into perspective as to how dire the score of 32 for the inner bay is. And that's why we want to move this program forward. So this is all part of a continuing partnership between the town of Dartmouth, the city of New Bedford, DNRT, and a host of other organizations, including Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, the zoo in New Bedford, and several others. So this continuing partnership is all funded under a 5-year EPA grant that has two main goals. One is to improve water quality, and the other is to try to sustain that water quality for future generations. So with this 5-year grant, we did a watershed scale assessment, sampling throughout the watershed, sampling in Apponeganset Bay. We identified what the main pollution sources are. We started out with about 12 sites. We expanded that out to about 18 over time so that we could slowly bracket these pollution sources in. And then we work with community stakeholders like DPW, like public health, like concerned citizens on the Harbor Committee, the Harbor Planning Implementation Committee, to develop solutions that have overlapping benefits for the community. And then we're working currently to use grant funding, in addition to this grant funding, to implement some of those solutions up and down the watershed so we can improve water quality, bring eelgrass back over time, and reduce the incidence of beach and shellfish area closures, which I think is an important thing for this community. Our implementations include things like green infrastructure to sort of replicate natural processes on Kempton Street or in the zoo. They include restoration of habitat. Down on Elm Street, we're looking at removing a dam, restoring floodplains so that the community can be more resilient and have cleaner water, and that fish can now move upstream. And then what we're focusing on tonight, improving wastewater management. And then long-term monitoring. And then in the sustain category, we're doing a lot of science to understand how much nitrogen can Apponeganset Bay withstand and still remain healthy. We want to get that number right, because if we go too far to the left, now it's an undue burden on the community and on the town to try to meet that. And if we go too far right, then Apponeganset Bay starts to continue its decline. So we're trying to hit that target, and to do that, we're doing a lot of science, partnered with the Marine Biological Lab, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, Woodwell Climate Research Center, and a lot of other really qualified people, including the Buzzards Bay National Estuary Program. Joe Costa over there is doing the nutrient modeling for this, and he's what I would consider a national expert. So we're putting a lot of resources into making sure we get this right. And then those findings go to EPA, and then we're able to work with the town to advocate for sustainable ways to manage nitrogen inside the watershed and preserve water quality down there. None of this is a unilateral process. I think every stage of this has been in discussion, in cooperation with key town partners, and we want to make sure that as we move forward, the town continues to be on board and that the solutions are acceptable to not only the town and that they're attainable, but they're also not going to impact area residents in an undue way. And then once we get those sustainable measures in place, the town of Dartmouth is then able to access additional resources in the form of grant funding and other low-interest loans to manage nitrogen in the watershed. Septic systems and sewered areas. So this really cuts to the heart of the problem, right? So in the course of doing a lot of the analysis we did in the watershed scale assessment, we worked really long and hard with Tim and his staff, including Paul Duart, and with Chris Michaud and his staff to update the sewer maps for Dartmouth. The town of Dartmouth currently does not have a GIS tech. So we stepped in and we partnered with Tim and we started updating the maps for Dartmouth. We worked with Gary and his staff to get billing data that allowed Joe Costa to ascertain who's on sewer, who's on septic, and we started overlaying those two data sets. And what we found when we did that is that we have 122 homes in Dartmouth that are in areas that are sewered, and some have been sewered for decades, that still are operating an on-site wastewater system or a septic system of some kind. So the average system discharge is 22 pounds of nitrogen per year, and that's for a brand new, fully functioning Title V septic in a 3-person household. Now, if you deviate from that in any way with age or with additional people, you start to go up in that number. We use that number as an average, so we're looking at, when you scale that up over 122 homes, you're looking at close to 3,000 pounds of nitrogen. And then we feel like there's various barriers as to why a lot of these people are still on-site septic and haven't connected to sewer. Those barriers might be financial, they might be technical, they might just be a lack of capacity to act or an understanding of the process. And obviously this has a huge impact on water quality in Apponeganset Bay and in Buttonwood Brook, where we find high nitrogen levels in certain parts of the brook. And then it has an impact on the ability to sustain and expand the municipal sewer system, this infrastructure that really is a public collective. And if we have a percentage of the population that's not involved in this and not supporting the system, then the system gets deprived of revenue and the municipality can't maintain or expand or upgrade things like the wastewater treatment plant. So how can we help? Connect to Protect, which is a partnership that we've been working on from the ground up with Tim, with Chris, with people like Dave, with Chris Vitale, working through a memorandum of agreement, is really what I would consider the absolute best case of government. This is us taking $100,000 initially, because I feel like this is a pilot that will expand in the future. It's us taking $100,000 of federal grant funding that we went to EPA and got permission to use for this specific project and bringing it back into our community to assist people with sewer connections who have maybe deferred for any one of those barriers that I talked about earlier. And those are real barriers. I can tell you right now, if someone came to me today and said, hey, you've got to pay $8,000 to connect your house to sewer, I'd be having a tough conversation in the household. So I feel like these are real barriers and we're going to bring a real solution to people. And these are local issues in Dartmouth, not that they're not shared across all 21 communities in Buzzards Bay, because there are multiple communities across the bay where we have sewer access but still have homes on septic. But these are local issues in Dartmouth, and we want to bring local solutions without having outsiders come in and tell us what to do, and we want to drive that from local stakeholders. And I think the real slam dunk for me on this, is that we're going to contract local Dartmouth-approved utility installers to do the work. So we're going to bring that grant money back into the community, to help Dartmouth residents improve water quality, improve their own households, and we're going to do it with local people. I mean, this is a huge win-win situation, if you ask me. So like I already said, we've got EPA Southeast New England program funding. This is a voluntary connection program. We're not telling anyone they have to connect, but we want to get the word out to people on this list of 122 people that we have. It's sort of a limited time because our grant expires in October of 2026. And we want to offer each household a $5,000 subsidy that gets paid directly to the contractor, sort of using this Mass Save model. I just helped my mom get her home insulated using Mass Save, and all she got was the bill for what was left over after Mass Save paid everything. We want to make this really easy for people, and we want them just to pay whatever the difference is. So when someone comes to this program and they enroll, we'll send one of these approved utility contractors from Dartmouth who's been doing this in this area for 20 or 30 years. They'll get an estimate. They'll come back to us. We'll look at it. They'll talk with the homeowner. And if the homeowner says, yes, I want to go forward, then they'll provide them an invoice breakdown that shows the subsidy already removed and what the true cost for the homeowner is. So we have total transparency with the homeowner. And then we've also worked for quite a while with Tim and with the DPW board, who recently gave us provisional approval for a reduced connection fee during the duration of this program for homeowners. So the connection fee was recently raised to $2,500 for people who have not already paid a betterment. And Tim and the DPW board have agreed that for this program, it's appropriate to reduce that fee back to the old fee of $1,500 in order to further incentivize connections across the watershed. And like I said earlier, I really view this Apponeganset Buttonwood as a pilot program that we hope to expand into the entire town of Dartmouth and gain more grant funding and push more people through a positive incentive program to connect their homes to sewer and clean up our watershed and further sustain the system. So we want to give people application and contracting assistance. We'll deal with the contractor to get it all set up so that we remove that burden on the homeowner. We're really looking at, as we looked at all these properties on this map, and you see those red properties on the map, this is just sort of a squeezed down version, but those are actually parcel. This is a parcel map. The black lines are sewer lines, and you see the green areas are shaded wetland resources that all sort of drain down to Apponeganset Bay. We want to work with all of these people, but we did some analysis on the properties, and we really came down to sort of looking at some of the oldest properties with the oldest septic systems, and we're looking at about 2/3 of these properties that were built pre-Title V, mostly in the 1940s and 1950s during the pre-World War II or the post-World War II housing boom, that you see sort of that just so happened to fall sort of into the working class neighborhoods of Dartmouth around Sharp and Milton and up off of Slocum Road where you have Leonore and Westwood and all of these areas. They tend to be smaller houses and they tend to be very close to the road, which makes them easy to connect. So that is really what we're looking at as our Tier 1 properties. The first 80 properties happen to fall into that category, and we think that it's appropriate to give those people the first shot at the subsidy. We have enough money right now to connect 40 homes. I can't tell you at what pace that's going to occur, but we want to make sure that that money goes to the areas of the greatest need and where the greatest pollution might be taking place, just based off of the age of the systems in those areas. And once that goes beyond a certain time period, we will open up the program to all 122 properties. And then we're looking at proximity to water resources. If a house is immediately on the water, that would be in the immediate next wave, and then every property beyond that would be in the third wave. So, initially, we're going to engage homeowners directly through some mailers, and then work outward from there with responses in partnership with Tim and Chris. So, Project benefits, I've already gone over a lot of these. Lots of nitrogen removed from the bay, enhancing water quality, quality of life. This ties directly into economic drivers like the shellfishing industry, the scallop industry, the tourism industry for paid Narum. So we really want to support these economic drivers by trying to clean up Apponeganset Bay. And you can see that picture in the top right there. I took that picture in May, right at the top end of Apponeganset Bay. And you can see the algae mats that are in the bay and the algae mats that are up on the eelgrass. So there is a definite need for this. It increases area aesthetics and property values. If you connect to sewer and you abandon that old 60-year-old septic system, your home value is going to go up. It also really increases flexibility for homeowners. If you've got a leach field covering your whole backyard, you're unable to put up a pool. You're unable to build a garage, and you wouldn't be able to do an addition without expanding your septic system and going through that expensive process of permitting and building out a bigger septic system. Simply by using this program to connect to sewer, now that homeowner has full, unfettered use of their property, and they're more resilient to climate change, like rising groundwater that's going to slowly make septic systems less effective. So, and then of course, we talked about this earlier. The more people we bring in, the more revenue that the municipal sewer system can collect, and the better off we are in the future to expand and upgrade. So we want to partner with the town. I provided Chris Vitale with a draft memorandum of agreement between Buzzards Bay Coalition and the town, just sort of, more of a spirit versus a letter document, just so that everybody's clear on what the roles and responsibilities are. The coalition's going to be the lead project manager, going to be the lead marketing agent, and we'll work with the town on all of that. And we'll also manage the contractors and pay the subsidies to the contractors. And we're really looking for the town to partner with us on outreach to homeowners and then conduct that typical administrative, inspectional, and engineering stuff that they do for sewer connections anyway. And we're also looking for that discounted fee, which, the DPW board already in their last meeting gave approval, but I really thought it was appropriate to bring this to the select board because the next step is to have the memorandum of agreement signed, and that rate reduction is included in the memorandum of agreement. It's for a limited time, but you can see this chart that I produced here. This is, in the long run, a net positive for the town. The graph at the bottom shows, what an average annual sewer bill for a Dartmouth resident, right around $500. If we take that with a 0.5% annual increase, which is probably conservative and below what the net increases are, we gain $8,000 in change from forgiving $1,000 on the connection fee. And over longer periods of time, when you scale that up, we start to see much bigger gains going into the enterprise fund that allows Tim to make all these upgrades to his sewer system and maintain it in a good working order. So, closing this out, Connect to Protect, it's a voluntary program. I think it's an amazing opportunity for Dartmouth residents, and we really want to have a strong partnership with the town of Dartmouth on this. And I think, it supports our continued partnership that we've been in under the SNEP Pilot Watershed Initiative. And I think it also feeds into future partnerships and future ways that we can help in other parts of the watershed. And I would like to offer to, the Water Quality Committee that Buzzards Bay Coalition would be more than happy to have somebody sit as a observer or a guest member on the Water Quality Committee to help the town of Dartmouth work through all the complexities of managing wastewater, stormwater runoff, and all the other complex pieces of managing water quality in the town's various water bodies. So with that, I will conclude my brief and subject to your questions, members of the board.
Let me just, I know there was an article in the Weekly. You said there was 122 properties.
Yes.
11 which are being mandated. Those 11 that are being mandated, will they could they fall into this program?
I would like to see that happen. And I've had these discussions with Chris Michaud, and I don't think he's opposed to that. And, barring any, law or regulation in the EPA grant that would prevent us from doing that, those are exactly the people that I want to help.
Okay.
I mean, I think somebody who got that letter, who's in a financial bind, who, may get a deferment or a waiver and then defer for another 10 years, is the perfect person that we're looking to get connected right now.
All right, so let me ask this question. So you have a grant from the EPA.
Right.
For 100,000, and it's good for 2 years?
It's good through 2026, so federal fiscal year 2026.
Can you get additional grants for this, or
I
does this have to
absolutely
play
think so.
out and then you go for a renewal?
I think right now we're looking at trying to get this pilot program of 40 homes connected. We're going to learn a lot from that pilot program, both in, who is connecting, how we might market better, complications or contingencies with Tim and the DPW and Public Health Board, and then we're going to apply for more grant funding to expand this out into a bigger connection program that tries to capture the rest of the people in Upon-Agansett Bay, but also other parts of Dartmouth, especially in nitrogen-sensitive areas.
And I think one of the things that this board is very well aware of the water quality issues.
Yes.
And we know the work that you've done in the past. So I think in order for this town to put its money where its mouth is, I think it would be appropriate, and I'm going to float this idea to everybody, but Mr. Barber, you're going to have to be the driving force on this, is to get a request from the DPW to ask for an additional $100,000 of free cash so that the town could have a matching of the grant so that not only 40 homes could be done, 80 homes could be done. And I think that might be appropriate, and I think the board would be very much favorable. I was going to use another word, but I can't get it out of my mouth. Favorable for that, to continue this program, because, I mean, this is and to include that if the town was to put up $100,000 towards this program, those 11 homes can be used in that portion of it in case there's any EPA hassles.
Absolutely. And they would
that
get all the
can help
same
them out.
support and service as any other house, because I think they're just as important, if not more so, especially if they have a failing system.
And considering that most of these, the area that you have targeted is homes that are closer to the road, that the connection fees, that the work to be done isn't, a long way around. It could be just a short stub, and it's less of a burden to the homeowner.
Absolutely.
So my suggestion would be for Director Barber to sit down with our co-town administrators and pen a request for free cash in the amount of $100,000 to match this program.
Chairman McDonald, that's an awesome idea.
Mr. Mickelson.
Yes, great presentation as always.
Thanks.
I think we should really, I love the idea of these mailers, and they have to be consistent. It's not just one mailer, you'll have to follow through with them. Maybe this program that you just put forth tonight with all the details, and just hit these areas quite a few times. They most likely they'll have to look, they'll be in color, and it's cheap to put these things together today. And just isolate those areas and concentrate on those areas with those mailers to get these people, or make them aware of what this issue is. Because I guarantee you, half of them have no idea.
Absolutely.
None whatsoever. So let's educate them.
Will do.
Yeah?
Ms. Brooks?
Along that same line, I think it's important in the mailer to, I mean, certainly the folks who have septic know they have septic.
Absolutely.
They're not going to get a letter and
No,
say,
not be
oh,
surprised."
shock, that's where it goes. But it would be helpful to know a breakdown of the total costs so that they know what their cost might be. So if we know they're going to get $5,000 right off the bat, and the fee for the town connection has been reduced from $2,500 to $1,500, and what they can look at so that they can, understand how they go about paying it at a one-time, or how they can stretch their payments out.
Right, and
Who do
correct me
they
if I'm-
talk to about that?
If I'm wrong, Tim, but we also talked about, if a parcel in the past had paid a betterment, then they would not be subject to that connection fee. So I'm actually working with Tim right now to look at all 122 properties and break out who's paid a betterment in the past, whether it was a previous owner or them, and then determine who or what percentage would actually be subject to the connection fee. And then we also discussed at the DPW board meeting was allowing people just to set up a payment plan for that connection fee and spread that out over a few months so that, they can handle that contractor cost of a couple $1,000s and then have that connection fee cost to the town just spread out on a payment plan just to further ease the financial burden. Because I know right now with the way inflation's been over the last few years, a lot of people, myself included, have had significant erosion of savings, and it's just a reality of where we're at right now, and we want to make sure we're able to work with the town to try and accommodate that.
But those stats should be in that mailer too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to go to
Couple of comments. I think that Dan does a great job of understating the role that not only he's played, but what's been done with the DPW as well, and Tim. I've been between the harbor management plan and working with the DPW. I've seen the action. This is a team effort like we've never seen.
Absolutely.
Dan was able to, he's looked at every one of these properties. He knows our town as well as anybody in all the crucial areas. The main thing we're talking about here is not only, you pick these properties because they are not only close to the road, but they are the ones that are most important to solve a lot of problems. I'd just like to go back briefly to look at what our DEP experience was. And what we're doing here is we're taking action as a town to solve the problem instead of a thumbs up to DEP, a thumbs down and say, leave us alone. We're doing it our pace, at the best priorities, with experts like Dan in the BBC, et cetera. So, and the DPW board, and Tim especially, has taken on this as a gigantic responsibility to clean up our water, starting with not only our sewer treatment plant and the quality of the water, but all these things. And I think we're going to be able to take the model that we're using for the Buttonwood Brook. The city of Bedford is finally doing something to the zoo as a result of what the BBC has done for us. There's construction going on right now at Route 6 near the CVS store, and they're actually going to drain the zoo so that it properly drains, as opposed to there's no drainage there. It was never put in. And it's all a result of what this goes back to the grants and the research of the effort between all these different commodities. And hopefully we can take the model that we have here with the Buttonwood Brook and move it to the Pascomansit and the Slocum Rivers as we move forward, because they're all contributing. And of course, composting as well, because we try to enforce that. So it all ties together what the BBC is doing. And Dan mentioned it, but Mark Rasmussen, in one of our meetings, volunteered the fact that he has towns where there is participation on the boards of like a water quality board, where they either sit as a member or sit as a listener or whatever it may end up to be, where they really want to contribute and add their expertise to what we're doing in our water quality. So it's really exciting. And and finally, I just can't say enough of what Tim's done to take on this responsibility, along with the board, understanding how important this is and the kind of priority we need and the kind of money we're going to be spending in the short and long term. And I can't think of a better partner with Dan and the BBC to help us make that done. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. I grew up jumping off the Dykes Creek Bridge, so my heart's in this.
So Dan, just a couple of general things first.
Yes.
The data that Mass DEP had gotten in front of us a while back was really, really dated. So the fact that you're trying to bring that up to date is very, very important to us, when we look at some of the findings that they brought in front of us. So that work, I would imagine, is continuing from the Buttonwood Brook area, from your whole study area, to give us a better idea of what the actual nitrogen loads are currently, correct?
Absolutely. The science work I described to assess what the nitrogen threshold, how much a Pontiac Bay can withstand and still remain healthy, is underway right now. Joe Costa from the Buzzards Bay National Estuary Program and several others are working to go through meticulous detail, parcel by parcel, and calculate that loading data using an approved model so that we can come to the select board and to DPW. I would imagine sort of offline initially to discuss those numbers, but then eventually present those numbers to the town of Dartmouth as updated 2024 information based off of contemporary science and contemporary field collected data. So I think that's going to be great for the town.
All right, so as the data continues to come in and we're monitoring that, is there any work being done at the Buttonwood Park Zoo in order to deal with the nitrogen loads from the animals? And
So our biggest concern at Buttonwood Park Zoo is bacterial loading. There's a lot of legacy stormwater networks in Buttonwood Zoo that were built before any of us were around and anyone in New Bedford was currently in their positions. All that network drains directly to Buttonwood Brook, which includes a lot of runoff from animal enclosures that contains a lot of pollution. So we just got a $362,000 grant from EPA to design, and we're waiting on another grant from the Buzzards Bay National Estuary Program. If we get those grants, we'll have about $650,000 to correct those problems. And we also have reached out to USDA Natural Conservation Resource Service, and they are doing a site visit at the zoo to assess manure management and vegetation management in the zoo. And the zoo director, Gary Lunsford, the people in New Bedford's DPI have been partnering with us throughout this entire process. And I'm really excited to see this decades-old problem finally get looked at.
That's great.
It's just going to produce
because the data is great.
results.
If they're not going to do anything about it, then on that side of the equation, then it.
No, absolutely. We want to get data and take that data right into action. And that data really is what helped us to get these grants by going into the zoo and not only doing wet and dry weather testing and identifying the exact spots in the zoo that are causing that pollution, but also quantifying it, because it's always been, sort of this anecdotal, the zoo's really bad.
All right.
But we were able to quantify that with numbers and bring that to the granting agencies, and they just said, yes, this deserves
that's good
funding.
news. I won't get into the CSO problem that New Bedford has, which
it's a
is
different,
is
it's a different
game.
animal.
Yeah.
But more specifically on this program, the numbers are a little confusing to me. You've got 80, 40, 122, 11. So the 11 that you're talking about are problem systems right now that we know of, failed systems?
Right. Those are systems that Chris Michaud has delivered a letter to those households. Those are not included in the 122.
They are not included.
The one, right, there, that would bring our number up to 133 total, which is fine.
All right.
The 80 are the homes that we went through and looked at the data on home size, parcel size, age of the septic system, and proximity to sewer, and crunched some numbers on and said, these are our top tier candidates right here for our first release of the mailers.
Okay.
We want these people in these neighborhoods, which are, like I said, largely clustered in the working class areas of Dartmouth, to have the first crack at the subsidy.
All right, so are we offering to the failed first or not?
No.
Okay, why is that?
We're still working through legalities with the EPA grant and with Chris Michaud on how we want to handle those properties. But I think the consensus, and I think Tim agrees with this, is that we want to include those properties.
Yep.
And if we come to that agreement, we will immediately engage those people and connect them with those resources. Like that will just be all stop, let's get to these people that need this assistance, and let's get them assistance so we can get them connected, because those failed systems are going to be our biggest polluters if they're in proximity to wetlands or if they're failed.
Great. The betterment, you kind of touched on that. You answered some of the questions that I had on that. Lastly, what do you got for daily gallon flow if your program is successful with a 122 or 130?
Yeah, so we're looking at,
133?
roughly about 150 gallons per household on a daily basis being added in. So if we connect these 40 houses, we're looking at about 9,000 gallons a day of additional flow. And I'll defer to Tim. I think we're looking at somewhere between 800,000 and 1 million gallons of capacity. So 9,000 gallons will be fairly inconsequential to the current wastewater treatment plant load. Tim, you want to? Okay.
All right, because one of the issues that we've been dealing with is the question of capacity in our
Absolutely.
system. And so you don't think this will have a real negative effect right away if we're able to connect all these houses?
No, I think 9,000 gallons in a remaining capacity of, roughly 800,000 is a pretty small fraction, even when you think about new development coming in. And if we go with say we get all 133 homes, we're still only looking, at roughly 40,000 gallons a day of additional load. So it's the additional load from these unsewered homes in the Apponeganset watershed only is fairly small.
All right, and obviously, it's not going to all come online at the same time, so
Right, it's going to be a very staggered.
Over 2 or 3 year period, if it's overly successful, then that's what we'll be looking at.
Exactly.
And Tim, that's not going to be a problem?
So Tim Barber, DPW Director. So most of these properties are in close vicinity to sewer, and we're doing the research to work out, like Dan said, who has betterment assessments to their properties and who has service connections. So any property that has a service connection, there was a commitment made, from the town when that sewer system was installed to allow them to connect for residential flow. So we consider that a commitment, that we committed to allow them to connect, so.
I just, if I could add, Chris, to that, I think the DPW is doing a lot of short-term work to maintain the system, and of course, looking the long-term. And my conversations have always been they're very concerned about capacity, and as they go forward with these extra additions, they're very aware of what to do and how to do it and when to do it. But the short-term repairs, especially the ARPA funding things, are going to give us more legs on capacity for the short term as well.
Absolutely, and we're at about 70% design on the interim aeration project as well.
Great.
Just had a quick question, Tim. The areas where sewer has been installed and the houses that have not connected, those houses were initially figured into the flow rate anyway, correct?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
in essence, House A, which is in the area, puts out, let's just say 1,000 gallons. That was already been figured, so it's not a new 1,000 gallons, it's just 1,000 gallons that's not being used that was already in the figure to begin with.
Right, they're not contributing to the flow now, but they were calculated in the infrastructure.
Okay.
The issue is when you have large, non-conforming flows come in, developments and flows that take up that capacity, but,
Okay.
that we'd rather, some of these houses, were, like Dan said, were built in the 40s, 50s. The sewer systems in some of these areas were put in the late 60s and throughout the 70s, so that these systems have been in there a long time, and these houses have been operating on septic systems for many years, so I think it'd be a great project to get them connected.
Mr. Vitale, you had a comment?
No comment. I just wanted to, if the board is ready, talk about next steps and have a proposed motion.
Okay.
We were talking about the MOU. Is that the next step for us?
That's correct, yes. So as Dan had mentioned, we did receive a draft MOA from Dan. It's pretty simple in its current form. However, prior to taking the next steps on that, we wanted the opportunity to come here before the board, discuss the program. I know it's been, at this point, kind of behind the scenes. It's been discussed at a couple of the Board of Public Works meetings, but before, I guess, referring it to council,
So you would need a motion for you and Gary to send the draft to council for review.
That's correct.
Do I have that motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Brooks, seconded by Mr. Mickelson? Okay. On the motion, any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None unanimous. Okay. So that's the start.
Thank you.
Great job, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. This was very comprehensive and understandable, so I thank you.
I feel like a scientist, makes it simple. Huh?
It's an eye-opener every time this man
serious.
comes before us.
Put in that extra. All right, next on the agenda, we have Route 6 Corridor Survey Permitted Work Hour Amendment Request. First of all, I apologize. I thought at the beginning, you probably like, what is this guy talking about? You remind me of somebody, you remind me of a gentleman from Fire District 1. So I just, all right, I apologize. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
I thought the same thing, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, but I talked to him, thought he was. Go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you very much for having me tonight. I'm going to actually add a second request. Oh, by the way, my name is Jamie Pisano. I'm with VHB. But next time, if you don't mind, could I go before Dan? Because that was awesome. Tough shoes to follow. But I'm here. VHB is working with Mass DOT, and we're working on the Route 6 corridor. And there's actually two projects. One project that you're aware of, which goes from Fons Corner Mall Road over to Hathaway Road. And we're also doing a study now to do improvements on Route 6 from Hathaway Road out to New Bedford. Mass DOT requires us to do subsurface utility exploration. They call it SUE for short. And as a part of that, we're just doing what they call Quality B designation on those utilities. Typically, they put a tone on a line, and then through survey, they can actually mark on the road where that line goes. With the volumes that are out on Route 6, we thought it would be appropriate to work at night as we're in the roadway. So with that, tonight, my request will be permission from the town to work at night. We've estimated that the work will take about 5 weeks, working Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. The next steps for us is we're applying for an access permit from Mass DOT. With the access permit, we'll have traffic control laid out that's all approved to work on the roadway. There'll be a police detail as a part of that component. Our intent is hopefully to get the access permit, say, this month, so that hopefully we're out as early as possible this fall doing that designation.
Well, I think the request to do this work at night is probably one of the better requests that we received, that's for sure, especially considering that Route 6 is probably one of the key, if not the key, access road. So I just think it's a great request. And I like the idea that there will be details. And I think prior to the start of this work, I think it would be, DPW can get a hold of the police and we can use the signage just to forewarn people. And let's see if we can also get, the information out social media wise on our town websites and whatnot. Getting it out to everybody, DCTV, just to make sure.
And our message board out front.
Right, and our message board out front. I mean, I think the timing between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. is probably best. It's a whole lot easier than 9 to 5, that's for sure. So, board, any questions on this?
Is this, the Route 6 part is going to be based, we're looking to the new design that it was presented to us and the improvements on the new design, so that's what you're doing the research for?
Sorry, there's two projects we're going to be doing this work for.
Yeah.
It's the one from Fons Corner to Hathaway Road.
Right, and that's for studying to eventually do the work that they proposed to us to
Yes.
change the lanes and,
Yeah,
okay.
we're in final design on that part. We're just confirming that we're not putting, say, a catch basin over an
Okay.
existing utility.
And could you talk a bit about the one going up Hathaway Road as well?
From Hathaway Road out to New Bedford along Route 6,
Not on Hathaway Road.
No,
Not
Hathaway
on
Road.
Hathaway, it'd be on Route 6.
Oh, to continue up the hill
Yes.
there? Okay, oh, I see, misunderstood.
So the proposed improvements that you'd have in that section from Fons Corner to Hathaway, we're envisioning that continuing up all the way over to New Bedford. But there's a whole process that I have to go through with Mass DOT.
I thought you said up Hathaway Road.
I'm sorry.
That's, no,
Apologize for that.
I heard it wrong. Thank you.
No, the Hathaway Road is a different animal.
Oh, I know, that's why it pricked me
Yeah.
up.
Well, it's important.
Mr.
It's
Chairman,
important, but
just for clarification, so I understand my role in this piece of the puzzle, if I get the approval tonight, then I get the approval from Mass DOT with their access permit, who should I contact to give them enough lead time? Would it be Tim?
it would be our office, but through Tim, and also,
Police.
I'm assuming because of the police detail, it would be the town and also state troopers, because I think the state also has jurisdiction on that. So, and if the state troopers don't want to take the overtime, then it's our guys. So, once in a while, I see a statey doing overtime on Route 6, but most of the time, it's our guys. So,
Yeah, I just want to make sure that
Yep.
you guys get the
yeah,
notification
no, it
out
would be,
properly.
yeah, it would be just a quick notification from our office, and then it would be, we would send you over to DPW and also, the chief.
So is your goal to be done before the month of December?
Yes, sir.
Because that's when the traffic picks up even more, yeah.
Okay, terrific. All right. So, board's pleasure?
Motion to amend the work hour request from 9 PM to 5 AM. And
Monday through Thursday, correct?
Monday through Thursdays.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. O'Neill. On the motion, any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None unanimous. You got it. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Sorry for the delay.
You did a good job following Dan, trust me. All right, next item on the agenda, we have an update on the ARPA funding allocation. Yes.
So we have Tim Barber today to talk about the remaining projects that we have, balances. The last couple of weeks, we received close to $3.4 million in ARPA money from the county. These are projects that Tim had applied for and that we've been awarded.
Thank you.
So these are just the remaining projects.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Barber, you're all set.
So, yeah, so to date, we have, we recently, as Gary stated, we were awarded the 2.5 for the 579 Westport Road update for the treatment facility. And were also awarded a switchgear and breaker upgrade at the water pollution control facility. So that brings the current balance down to around $233,000. I had presented a number of projects last time I was here. A couple of those projects, we're having some procurement issues or delays in design on the biofilter for the water pollution control facility. So not to waste any time, the ARPA deadline is September 30th for awards. I'd like to present a couple additional projects, which will bring us to about 307,000 total projects fighting for that $233,000 spot. So we have enough projects so we don't leave any money on the table.
Right.
So we're looking at upgrades to our water pollution control tub grinder, which grinds chips all the branches and wood from residents and is used for the compost that we mix with the solids from the water pollution control facility. For $30,000, a water pollution control filter feed pump, also in a compost facility for $30,000. A transformer replacement at 299 Chase Road Water Treatment Facility. A well motor replacement for $9,000 at 299 Water Treatment Facility. PFAS sampling for 6 months for $9,000. We're working with Weston and Sampson on an evaluation of the entire treatment and wells for PFAS. And to do that, we need about 6 months of aggressive sampling. So we've contracted with a firm to test all and analyze all of our samples. So that's about $9,000. So and then a water leak detection project for about half of the water distribution infrastructure throughout the entire town for about $10,000. So it's an additional $145,000 to the projects that you approved last time we were here. Brings us up to about $307,000.
Okay. Board members have any questions?
I think it makes sense to submit more than the money we have, given the time. That way the county can look at these and determine which ones they're going to pick.
So
Maybe they have more money than they thought they had.
you never know. Somebody else could leave some money on the table, and they'd have to decide how to use that pretty quickly.
I'm glad we're in this position. Good job.
So we need a motion to authorize the adjustments.
Additional projects. Additional projects.
Yeah, the additional projects.
Motion to allocate the additional projects.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Ms. Brooks for the, for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, for the 6 additional projects for a total of $145,000.
Excellent.
On the motion, any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, unanimous. All right.
Thank you. I look
Terrific.
forward to
Thank you.
submitting all these applications tomorrow.
All right, sounds good. Okay, next item on the agenda, we have the fall town meeting warrant draft review. So, let's see. All right, so the first item this is the second version of the draft. So under Article 1, which is the Community Preservation Committee, it's a professional survey, preliminary design of the proposed Northern Scenic Greenway. They're looking to appropriate $25,000 from the CPA unrestricted funds. Do you want to, are you looking for our approval of these or are they just, is this a review?
So this is just a review tonight.
Okay.
At the next select board meeting will be the vote. Council is making tweaks to the language, so the language may change between now and then. There's some dollar figures that still have to be inputted,
Okay.
but you can see what we have to date.
All right, sounds good. All right, Article 2 is an appropriation to the stabilization fund, an additional $500,000. Article 3 is the appropriation for collective bargaining and non-union for the amount of $300,000 from surplus revenue. Article 4 is the supplemental appropriation for collective bargaining agreements. Vote $900,000 to personnel services for the purposes of supplementing FY25 sums, including ritual payments for the FY23-25 collective bargaining agreement between town and police. Article 5 is the capital planning committee report, which we don't have any amounts, which we will have the next time around. Article 6 is a personal bylaw amendment, the salary adjustments. Director of Emergency Management, $13,000 a year, part-time. Under seasonal and part-time positions, the EMA detail worker from $18 to $25 an hour. The sealer and weights and measures from $4,995 to $12,000 a year. By amending also seasonal and part-time positions to remove the civil preparedness director at $2,000 and also the worker from $15, because now they, of course, will now be under EMA. Article 7 is the omnibus charter corrections, which has got that 28 updates. Article 8 is the charter amendment with the Director of Public Works. Article 9 is pending, which is the establishment of the bylaw of local, state, emergency, and emergency powers. Article 10 is the citizens petition. That's still there, or is it?
So that does have to appear on the warrant, so there will be a motion at the time.
Okay, all right. So chances are this article will be withdrawn at town meeting, but it's there. So that's for our next meeting. We'll have the full final draft with the amounts from the capital planning report and any kind of language change from town council. All right, interim town administrator update, anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few things. The town clerk's office has wrapped up the state primary elections. Sarah and her staff did a great job organizing and running that process. Voter turnout was about 17%. It's a little low. We worked with Kathy Stanley and our energy consultant. The town was awarded a Green Communities grant in the amount of $160,000, $763. This grant was to help fund $61,000 towards a heat pump at the middle school, $61,000 for pneumatic control upgrades in the middle school, and $38,000 for a heat pump at Quinn. Chris and I held another department head meeting earlier today. Continue to review the FY26 budget process with the department heads. Also, CIPC will be meeting on Thursday of this week to review the capital requests submitted by the departments, so we can get that prepared for the warrant article that we just went over. And finally, on Friday of last week, the town certified FY25 free cash of $7.3 million. It is a record amount for the town, and it's due to, Chris and I went over some older warrant articles. We went over and rescinded those. It's also due to turnbacks from departments who continue to manage their budgets, very effectively and conservatively. And it's also adhering to the financial policies that this board and the Finance Committee have adopted over the years. So we're happy to see that. That's what funds the majority of our capital items and some of the warrant articles.
Yes, definitely. It was definitely a number that certainly stood out, that's for sure. All right, that's it for you? Okay. Old business, anything under Bliss Corner?
No.
Lake Nokichoke?
No new business.
Municipal broadband?
No new business.
Mass DEP Title V?
No new business.
All right. We have the minutes to approve of August 12th and August 26th. What's the board's pleasure?
Hearing any corrections?
I did
Motion
not
to
see
approve.
any.
August 12th, 2024,
How about the 26th?
and August 26th, 2024.
Thank you. Motion made by Mr. Mickelson to approve the minutes of August 12th and August 26th. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Brooks. On the motion, any questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, none unanimous. Select Board updates. Who's going to go first? Mr. Tattlebaum.
I have something to read. The reason why I'm doing this, because it is a proclamation for the month of September, and I was just given this recently as they put it together, and I'd like to read it into the record, if I may.
Go right ahead.
Town of Dartmouth proclamation. Whereas hunger and poverty are issues of grave concern in the United States, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the town of Dartmouth, and whereas the town of Dartmouth is committed to educating people about food insecurity and the importance of food banks and alleviating hunger in our communities, and whereas more than 820,000 individuals in Massachusetts rely on food provided by the 4 Massachusetts food banks and full plate distributing markets each month. And whereas the high costs of housing, food, and other basic needs have exacerbated food insecurity across the Commonwealth and put tremendous stress on the emergency food assistance system, and whereas the Greater Boston Food Bank and its 600 community food partners, including the YMCA South Coast, provide vital hunger relief services to our most vulnerable neighbors. And whereas the town of Dartmouth shall work with hunger relief organizations to make Massachusetts hunger-free by supporting access to 3 healthy meals a day for our residents in need. The Select Board of the town of Dartmouth do hereby proclaim the month of September 2024 to be Hunger Action Month, and urge all the citizens of Dartmouth to take cognizance of this event and participate fittingly in its observance. Given at the town of Dartmouth this September in the year 2024, and of the independent of the United States of America by 244, by the town Select Board of the town of Dartmouth.
I think we can all concur with that, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I have a follow-up to that. The, Mr. Tattlebaum, I know during the summer months, they moved the distribution from the Y on Gulf Road to St. Mary's Church on Tuesdays. Has it now gone back to the Y?
Yeah, they move it because of camp.
Right.
Yes, it's
right.
going to go back there.
So just to let our residents know that if they are in need, every Tuesday, or is it, I believe it's every other Tuesday, they can go to the Y on Gulf Road in the afternoon. I know it ends around 5 o'clock. I'm not sure when they start distribution.
It's like 1 to 4.
It's
1 to 4?
It's every
Thank you.
every second and fourth Tuesday of the month from 2:30 to 4 o'clock.
Right.
Cars cannot line up until 2 p.m. for food for seniors, individuals, and families in need. No pre-registration is required. Each household will receive prepackaged bags of groceries, including non-perishable items such as fresh produce and meats when available.
We're doing it at the Dartmouth Y, we're doing it at the New Bedford Y. And one of the beauties of the Dartmouth Y program is that people go in, and kids especially, and volunteers, and they grow, work the farm in the back, and that much of that product is then distributed through this system. It's a wonderful system, and I'm proud to be a part of the YMC South Coast and providing this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else?
Not me.
Okay, Mr. Mickelson, you have anything?
I'm all set.
Mr. O'Neill, you have anything?
All set.
Mrs. Brooks?
No, I just want to thank everyone that came out last Thursday, it would have been 2 Thursdays ago, August 29th, to the Overdose Awareness Night held in front of the town hall. I just want to publicly thank everyone that came out, everyone that was involved, and if you are interested in viewing our event, you can look on DCTV. Peter Chase and his team put together a beautiful overview of our event, and if you're in need of any resources, you can watch that, and you can contact the town hall youth advocate Dolores Joseph or Matt Dansrow at the Council on Aging, and they can help or point you in the right direction. Thank you.
Well done, Mrs. Brooks.
All right, couple things. Number one, with the reading of that proclamation, I do want to remind the board that in November, we generally get a request from an individual in town for pancreatic cancer for the month of November. So I think if we can beat that request, we can get it ready for one of our meetings in October so that we can do the same thing as we normally do for November. We also have a list of road construction, just like when the end of summer comes around, generally you can always rely on a flurry of road construction to happen because basically the new fiscal year starts July 1st. So we got money at that time, so we'll be able to do the roads. So there was a lot of roads being done, a lot of information that's gone out there. Sometimes people don't get the information, but as much as possible, the DPW does send out the notifications. It is shared on social media, and it's shared by other people on social media to their group pages. So we do have binder courses that were done on Idlewood Avenue, Beverly Street, Rock Hill Drive, Ricketson Street, Beverick Lane, Lane Farm Road, and Blacksmith Drive. We have other work going on, or have gone, on Taft Avenue, Greystone Avenue, Old Westport Road, Allen Street from Sable to Homer Street, Ann Avenue, Eric Road, Sable Avenue, Homer Street, Russell's Mills Road, Elm to Tucker, Atlantic Street, Smith Street, Bergen Street, Russell's Mills from Perry Street to Bergen Street, Laurel Lane, Grinnell Street, Adams Street, Pearl Street, Prospect Street, Merrimack Street. And that's only a small sample of the 210 miles that exist in this town. To come, though, is Country View Circle from Route 6 to Old Fall River Road, Fonch Corner Road, Flax Swamp Road to High Hill Road, and Highland Avenue. So there's 3 more that's still to go. As we also got the last meeting, we were told that the Slocum Road will be done by Eversource, I believe probably in spring of 2025, if I'm not mistaken.
After school's over.
Slocum Road.
Slocum Road?
So phase 1 of their gas replacement happened now, and then phase 2, they're planning for the summer of 2025.
Okay. All right, terrific. All right, so that pretty much is it.
I guess.
So, yeah, really. One of the things also I do want to put into the back of the mind of my members. Not too many years ago, when we had a little extra on the free cash to spend, the select board at that time put an additional sum of money towards road repairs. I know it doesn't happen often, and I know we're very, very tight fiscally wise, but I think we would like to see that happen this year for next year. So
Yep, Mr. Chairman, just to comment on that, we are meeting with the DPW director on Thursday to go over his plan, his capital plan, and he has several roads on there that have been on the docket for quite some time, so now that we have this maybe larger commitment of free cash, we can maybe knock some of those out.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Terrific.
It's also going to be a part of our long-range planning to make
Yes.
sure we spend it every year properly.
Yep.
If I can, our total expenditures this year for road construction is about approximately 3.7 million. So, but that's spread out between road maintenance, Chapter 90, Eversource cost sharing, and the state also had a fair share plan that they gave us an additional 600,000 towards. So.
Keep spending it. We need the roads needed.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
All we do is hear complaints about our roads.
yes. Too many people say their teeth chatter as they drive around some of the roads in town, so let's see if we can calm down their molars. All right, with that,
Motion to adjourn.
motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by
Mrs. Brooks.
Mrs. Brooks. On the motion, any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.